Refeeds or high days. When do we use them? Why do we use them? And how do we go about them? So as most of you know, like at this point, pretty much everyone's pretty educated. A refeed day is to restore your glycogen. Okay, so that is the main purpose of it. As you know, in a fat loss phase, you're going to be depleting glycogen for training, for cardio. Your body uses carbs. Glycogen is just stored carbs, essentially. It's stored carbohydrates. So it does deplete it. And then we use these refeed days either defensively or offensively, pre-planned in or when we need them, to restore that glycogen and to basically go again.
Now, we restore glycogen not only to have a better cosmetic look, but for performance benefits. Like if you're deep into a cut and you just got this static approach, what you'll realize is past about 15% body fat for a lot of guys, not only are you just going to be losing fat, but you do really run the risk of your numbers in the gym going down, possible muscle loss. And while it is important and essential to deplete yourself in order to lose body fat, and that is a phase that you have to go through to actually get to the fat loss stage, we still want to make sure that we can get as lean as possible while remaining as strong, full, and big as possible.
And not to mention, on a fat loss phase, you'll have a far lower appetite and a far higher metabolism running this approach. Now, let's talk about a gaining phase as well, because we still use high days in a gaining phase when we're doing something like a carb cycling diet, but this isn't exclusive to a carb cycling diet. You can run refeed days on a static approach as well, and actually you will need them more than if you were carb cycling. So on a gaining phase, you're obviously not going to be depleting that glycogen as much because we're eating the carbohydrates before training. We're eating more carbohydrates day to day. So we're storing a lot of those carbohydrates as glycogen within the body. However, you will still, especially on a carb cycling approach, we actually run some days, especially low days in a deficit, use up a little bit of glycogen. And that's when we pre-program in these high days to supercompensate, store a little bit more glycogen, and push ourselves in a bigger surplus for that day when our body is more likely to use those carbs for fuel.
So how do we actually go about these refeed days in terms of the food choices? Because I think what you'll realize if you're reversing out of a fat loss phase or going straight into this approach, it's quite hard to get in, 600 grams of carbs, for example, per day. You might actually really struggle trying to do it with clean food. So what we suggest for most guys is a 50-50 approach. And essentially what we do is 50% of the foods for that day is going to come from clean sources. So think what you've been eating in your cutting phase or in your growing phase usually, which is like potatoes, rice, easily digestible foods. And then 50% of the time we can have sugar and cereal sources, which is ideally going to be around training. And the reason we do that is because it's much easier to get down. It's very quick, easily digestible. And I haven't met, a lot of guys that can eat that amount of potatoes or rice or, rice cakes in that amount.
So typically how I'd structure it is, for clean foods, I like to just stick to rice, right? So I'll put a certain amount in the rice cooker, and I know about half my carbs for that day are covered from just something like rice. You could try with oats, potatoes, it's going to be higher because we're not really worried about satiety on these days. Now, the other half is going to come from things like Gatorade, sports drinks, intra-workout. Now, I might have some gummies in there as well, especially since I crave them. And also I might have, rice-based cereals. So like Rice Puffs, Cocoa Puffs, or any other rice-based cereal. Honestly, you can get pretty dirty with the carbs that you eat. But as long as you understand what's in these foods, you can actually understand that it really works quite well. And for the most part, if you want to go with a more relaxed approach, if generally you don't really track macros, you don't know what you're eating, you can just really see these refeed days as free range on carb only sources. Now, this is where people mess it up. I'll run you through the macros on these days. So for most guys running a typical carb cycling approach, and I might even do this for clients that aren't as advanced and want something to be a little bit more simple, we'll just run rest day and training day calories. Now, it might typically look like something like on rest day, you'll have 200 grams of protein, you'll have about 60 grams of fat, and then your carbs might be around 150 grams. Now, on a training day, it would be a little less because carbs are protein sparing. So you might have 180 grams of protein, maybe 50 grams of fat, and you might have about 300 grams of carbs. Now, on these high days, what I'll do is I'll run the protein pretty low. It might be only about 160 grams of protein. The fat's as low as we can get them, honestly, about 45 grams of fat. And then I'll pretty much 2x what I would have on a typical training day. So I might run about 600 grams of carbs, or potentially higher if you're a bigger guy, you can store more glycogen. And this is where you really see how different it is to the typical refeed day that beginners try to run. People see refeed or high day and just think of it as free range, I can eat as many calories as I want. But it's actually the polar opposite, because what most guys do is they eat a ton of fats on this day. And when we're talking about restoring glycogen, it's stored carbohydrates. If you're eating a ton of fats, that is not going to replenish your glycogen. You're going to stay low in glycogen, but your body weight is just going to climb and you're going to store fat on those days. So it's very important to know what sort of foods you can eat to pretty much get, this is a pretty insane macro split. You'll notice it's hard to get 600 grams of carbs and keep your fats at a very low amount.
Yeah, there's no added fats that you need to do on those days. There's no olive oil, there's no avocados. Just from most food choices, eating this amount of carbs alongside with the protein, you will hit the fats most times as a byproduct of that. Now, the typical issue that I see guys run into trying to run refeed days is they're trying to stick with the, 3 meals a day or even 4 meals a day. If you're trying to get in this amount of carbs and actually digest it and feel decent, you will have to have 5 meals a day, possibly 6 meals a day to actually get in those numbers.
Yeah, because if you're doing 3 meals a day, that's 200 grams of carbs per meal. It's very unlikely you're going to be able to, for one, get that down alongside your protein intake and also digest it properly and optimize it around the workout. So I'll typically run, 5 meals, sometimes 6 meals a day. We'll go 6 meals for simplicity's sake to work with the numbers. And let's say meal 4 and 5 is your pre and post workout window. You will want to focus a lot of those carbs around that window. So, typically you could just run 100 across the board basically. But what I would prefer to do would be to run 150 pre-workout, 150 post-workout, and 50 as an intra-workout through something like a Gatorade. And now you've got about 50 to 60% of your carbs around that training window. You only got about 250 left. And then the rest of the meals will be about 60 grams of carbs, okay? Now, if you're having 5 meals a day, that would be close to about 85, I think. I've got to run the math, but pretty much 50 to 60% of those carbs are around the training window. That's how I would structure it. Now, with this approach, right, on a fat loss phase, this is where I really need to disagree with the calories in, calories out thing. And this is why I love it. And I've seen this so many times to where clients come to me pretty much stalled out at let's say 1800 calories. And on paper, it makes no sense. There's no way someone's metabolism is that low, especially if they're doing cardio. What I've seen over and over again is they were losing no fat beforehand, weight loss had stalled, and what I did was put them on the exact same calories, averaged out throughout the week, except it was split up like this. It was split up into rest days, training days, and refeed days, either pre-programmed in or when we need them, and all of a sudden, they're losing fat again.
And like we mentioned, losing fat again, not necessarily always body weight. So body weight and body fat are two completely different things. And ideally the goal as a byproduct, you can lose body weight, but the goal isn't always to lose body weight, but actually lose body fat. And we've seen countless times guys come to us in a similar situation. They're eating this amount of calories. On paper, it doesn't make sense. They claim they're very vigilant with their tracking and that everything looks good. And they're running this static approach. We put them on a carb cycling approach. Their body composition looks a ton better. Their body weight goes down as well. And overall, they feel a lot better in the gym and performance day to day.
This is exactly what I was talking about. So this is one of our clients, and it doesn't say in here, but his weight now is about 2 kilos heavier in this second photo. Okay, this is a fat loss diet. He's weighing heavier. He has more glycogen. Look at the difference in the arms. Look how much fuller he is. And he's leaner. He's lost body fat. So I honestly don't give a fuck what happens with the scale. I couldn't give a shit. I care about how you look. And the approach he was running before was pretty much like a static low carb approach. And we pretty much chucked a fuck ton of carbs in there and he's recomped. Okay, I consistently see this because what happens is, even in terms of the calories in, calories out approach, that's when it breaks because we're not talking about metabolism. We're not talking about you burn calories by digesting the food as well. And usually what happens is by incorporating some of these really high days, your metabolism will go up to the point where you are once again in a bigger deficit, even though the calories are actually the same. This is what people don't take into account when you're talking about calories in, calories out.
And you will not get the same effect from just raising calories or going with this high fat approach or cheat meal approach. Now, I understand this assumes 100% adherence to the diet. And for some guys, we do have to use this refeed as a cheat day and just throw that at them in order for them to adhere to the rest of the diet for the week. But for guys who want it 100% optimal, who want similar results to Teddy, you have to be just as vigilant on the refeed days as any other day, realistically.
And just looping back to the metabolism thing, this happens for so many different reasons. It's just such a good self-regulating system because you are heavier, which means you burn more calories at rest because you're storing more glycogen. You are stronger because the cross-section of the muscle bellies is bigger. You have better leverages, so you're burning more calories during your training. You technically have higher volume and you need to digest more food, which all means you're just burning more calories. Your body's a more efficient machine. And this is where I see guys I push up their calories and they lose more weight. It's actually fucking insane. And it just completely breaks what people think they understand about dieting. And I just really struggle to ever go back on a different approach rather than running an approach like this. Now, can it get complicated? Maybe. I don't think so. I think it makes it funner too, because you have these days where you're depleted, you're hungry, you feel like you're in a fat loss phase, but then for 2-3 days after this high day, you're good. On the high day, it feels like you're cheating. It doesn't feel like it makes any fucking sense because this is a lot of calories. calories. This is a lot of food, especially if you're going with the 50-50 and you're trying to get 300 grams of carbs from that rice. That is a lot of rice. And then on top of that, you get to binge out. And this is where it kind of confuses guys when I tell them, no, I can't really binge out on bakery goods. I can't binge out on chocolate and I can't binge out on fast food, but I can eat basically as many Sour Patch gummies as I want. Okay. Because all I'm doing is just trying to hit these carbs without pushing the fats up. And this is where it actually gets kind of tricky, but that's pretty much the approach we run. It's pretty fucking simple. If you don't want to mess it up, just run your training and your rest day calories as is, and then pick your highest demand day to run as your high day, double the carbs on the training day, lower the protein and the fats a little bit, and you'll be good.
Now, there is a good chance you watch the video, watch us crunch the numbers and give you the math, and you will retain none of it. You will walk away from this video and not remember a fucking single thing we said. I'm the exact same way, man. So you can either rewatch it about 10 times, or if you want to talk about how we'd implement it into your life and actually fit it around your lifestyle and your schedule and whatever phase you're in, you'll see it in that first link in the description. We'll talk for about half an hour, see how we can make it happen. And if we can, let's work together, man.
Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'll be dropping full guides all the time. We'll see you in the next one.
Peace.